Congratulations to Joel, I said, forcing the words through a smile that felt like swallowing glass. My name is Connor Tremblay, and I'm 42 years old. I just watched 15 years of my life get handed to a 24-year-old kid who'd been at Summit Logistics exactly 4 months. Joel grinned like he'd earned something. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and broken promises. Everyone clapped. I clapped too, though my hands felt numb. William Hale, my boss and company owner, stood at the head of the table looking pleased with himself. Joel's going to do great things as our new vice president of operations, he announced. The same position I'd been promised for 2 years. The same position I'd been doing the work for since our last VP quit. I kept my face neutral, but something cold settled in my chest where hope used to live. Joel was William's nephew. Everyone knew it. Nobody talked about it. Fresh business degree and cockiness that came from never having to prove anything. He'd spent 4 months watching me handle vendor contracts, manage warehouse operations, and solve problems across 3 states. Now he was my boss. I'd started at Summit Logistics in March 2009, right after the economy crashed and my previous company folded. Manufacturing and distribution felt solid, reliable. Something I could build a career on. William hired me himself, shook my hand, said they needed someone with my experience managing supply chains. We're growing fast, he'd said during my interview. Lots of room for advancement for the right people. I became the right person. Worked weekends when shipments got delayed. Stayed late when customers had emergencies. Built relationships with suppliers from Seattle to San Diego. My performance reviews were perfect. William always smiled, always promised bigger things were coming. Your management material, Connor, he'd say. Just need to be patient. I was good at being patient. I was good at everything they needed. My ex-wife Gloria used to say I worked too much. You're never home, she'd complain during our last year together. That company doesn't care about you. I thought she was wrong. I thought loyalty mattered. I thought hard work would be rewarded eventually. The first crack appeared 8 months ago when William mentioned his nephew might join the company. Smart kid, he'd said. Just graduated from University of Washington. Business degree with honors. I'd nodded, thinking nothing of it. Companies hired recent graduates all the time. But Joel didn't start at entry level. He started with the title, Operations Analyst, and an office next to Williams. No warehouse training, no customer service experience, no understanding of how our business actually worked. William introduced him around like visiting royalty. Joel's going to observe our processes, William announced. Learn how we operate. Joel observed by sitting in on my client calls, taking notes while I explained logistics strategies, asking questions that showed he understood nothing about distribution. I trained him because that's what you do. You help the new guy. Even when the new guy's last name is Hale and his uncle signs your paychecks. Even when you start to suspect this isn't going to end well for you. The moment I knew came 6 weeks ago during a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd stayed late to finish quarterly reports when I heard voices from William's office. His door was cracked open, and sound carried better than people realized. The board's going to ask questions, William was saying. Joel's only been here 3 months. Another voice, deeper. Probably our accountant, Joy. You said Connor was ready for promotion. Connor's solid, but Joel's family, William replied. Plus he's got the degree. Fresh ideas, new energy. The board likes that kind of thing. My stomach dropped. What about Connor's experience? Joy asked. William laughed. Not mean, but not kind either. Connor's a good worker. Reliable. But he's not executive material. He'll keep doing what he's doing, make decent money, and everything works out fine. I stood in that hallway listening to them plan my future. Joel would get the VP position. I would train him, support him, and pretend to be grateful for the opportunity. I walked back to my desk quietly and went home in complete silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about William's words. Not executive material. Like 15 years meant nothing. Like all the times I'd saved deals, fixed problems, and kept the company running smoothly were just part of my basic job requirements. I thought about Gloria, how she'd always said I let people walk over me. Stand up for yourself for once, she'd said during one of our last fights before the divorce. Maybe she'd been right. Maybe I'd been too trusting, too patient, too willing to believe that good work spoke for itself. The next morning, I came to work with different eyes. I watched how William included Joel in executive meetings while keeping me focused on daily operations. I saw how other managers started deferring to Joel on decisions that should have been mine. I noticed how Joel began speaking about our plans and our vision like he'd built this company from scratch. 6 weeks later, sitting in that conference room, watching Joel accept congratulations for a job he hadn't earned, I felt something break inside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Clearer. Connor's been invaluable in getting Joel up to speed, William added, like that made it better. Like 15 years of perfect performance reviews and 60-hour weeks were elaborate job training for someone else's future. I nodded. Happy to help, I said. The meeting ended. People filed out, offering Joel handshakes and congratulations. I gathered my notepad and pen, moving slower than usual. My mind felt sharp and clear, like when you wake up in the middle of the night and suddenly understand something that's been bothering you for months. William caught my arm as I reached the door. Connor, stick around a minute. We stood alone in the conference room. He loosened his tie and tried to look sympathetic. I know this might come as a surprise, he said. But Joel brings fresh perspectives. New energy. Sure, I said. You understand, right? It's nothing personal. I looked at him for a long moment. William was 58, soft around the middle, thinning hair he combed over to hide the bald spots. He'd inherited this company when his father died 10 years ago. I understand perfectly, I said. William relaxed. Good. I knew you'd be professional about this. That's why you're such a valuable team member. Valuable. Not valuable enough for the promotion I'd earned, but valuable enough to train his nephew and smile about it. I walked back to my desk and sat down. The office buzzed with normal activity. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people solving problems. Joel was already at his new desk, studying organizational charts like they contained secrets of the universe. He looked up when he saw me. Connor, thanks for everything. I know this transition might feel weird, but I really want to work together well. I almost laughed. Here was a kid who'd watched me do a job for 4 months, now telling me about transitions. Whatever you need, I said. Over the next week, Joel's inexperience became obvious to everyone except William. He struggled with basic concepts like inventory turnover and shipping schedules. During client calls, he'd look to me for answers, then repeat what I said like it was his own insight. The first real crisis came 2 weeks after Joel's promotion. Our biggest client, JKT Manufacturing, had a problem with delayed shipments from our Portland warehouse. Their production manager, Steve Kowalski, called at 7 a.m. screaming about missing components that would shut down their assembly line. I'd been managing JKT's account for 8 years. I knew their schedules, their backup needs, their people. Within an hour, I'd contacted our Portland team, arranged emergency shipping from our Seattle warehouse, and had the components on a truck heading south. Joel watched me work, taking notes. When I finished, he said, "Nice job. I should probably call Steve and update him on our solution." Our solution? I asked. Well, yeah. I mean, you handled the logistics, but as VP, I should manage the client relationship. He picked up his phone. I wanted to warn him that Steve was still angry, that he needed to hear specifics about delivery times and backup plans. But I didn't. Joel's call lasted 3 minutes. When he hung up, his face was red. Steve was pretty rude, he said. Kept asking about details I didn't have. The JKT situation got worse. Steve called William directly, expressing concerns about leadership changes and whether Summit could still handle their account. William called me into his office, Joel already sitting there looking defensive. "Connor, what happened with JKT?" William asked. I explained the shipping delay, the emergency fix, and the successful delivery. William nodded. "So why is Steve upset about our customer service?" I glanced at Joel, who was studying his shoes. "You'd have to ask Joel about the follow-up call." "Joel handled it perfectly," William said without even looking at his nephew. "Steve's just being difficult. These old school managers don't like change." But I could see doubt creeping into William's eyes. Over the next month, similar problems multiplied. Joel made decisions without understanding the consequences. He promised delivery dates we couldn't meet, agreed to contract terms that killed our profits, and tried to implement efficiency improvements that created chaos in our warehouses. Each time, I fixed the problems quietly. Not because Joel deserved it, but because our employees and customers didn't deserve to suffer for William's nepotism. The breaking point came during our quarterly review with Tenno Industries, our second largest client. Joel had insisted on leading the presentation, despite my suggestions that we prepare more thoroughly. He'd put together slides full of business school buzzwords but lacking any real understanding of Tenno's specific needs. The meeting was a disaster. Joel stumbled through explanations of our synergistic approaches and optimized solutions, while Tenno's executives exchanged confused looks. When they asked specific questions about shipping routes and cost structures, Joel looked to me for answers. I provided the information, but the damage was done. Tenno's CEO, Barbara Joshua, pulled me aside afterward. "Connor, what's happening here? We've worked together for 6 years. You know our business inside and out. But this new guy..." "Joel's still learning," I said diplomatically. "Learning on our account? We're paying you significant money for expertise, not training seminars." She shook her head. "We need to discuss whether this relationship is still working for us." That afternoon, William called me into his office again. "Tenno's threatening to review their contract," he said. "What did you say to Barbara?" "I answered her technical questions," I said. Joel wasn't prepared for the specific details they needed. William's face darkened. Joel was perfectly prepared. "You undermined him. Made him look bad in front of an important client." I stared at him. I answered questions about shipping costs and delivery schedules. Basic information any VP should know. Your job is to support Joel, not show off your knowledge. William leaned back in his chair. "I'm starting to think you have a problem with this transition. My problem is watching our clients lose confidence in our capabilities. Our capabilities are fine. The problem is your attitude." William's voice got harder. "Joel's fresh out of school with innovative ideas. You're stuck in old ways of thinking. Maybe it's time you accepted that." I felt something shift inside me. After 15 years of loyalty, William was questioning my commitment because I wouldn't pretend his incompetent nephew was qualified for a job he'd never earned. "Maybe it is," I said quietly. William must have heard something in my voice because his expression changed. "Connor, let's not do anything hasty here." But it was too late for that conversation. Over the next 2 weeks, William made his position clear. He excluded me from client meetings, redirected my emails through Joel, and started questioning every decision I made. The message was obvious. Fall in line or get out. Joel, emboldened by his uncle's support, began treating me like a subordinate who'd forgotten his place. He'd interrupt me during meetings, correct my outdated approaches, and make jokes about old dogs and new tricks. The other employees watched this dynamic with growing discomfort. Sarah from accounting pulled me aside one afternoon. "Connor, what's happening? Everyone's talking about how Joel's treating you." "Politics," I said simply. "It's not right. You built half the systems we use. You saved this company during the recession." She looked around nervously. "People are starting to update their resumes." I wasn't surprised. Good employees don't stick around to watch competence get punished and incompetence get rewarded. But that wasn't my problem anymore. The final confrontation came on a Friday afternoon. Joel had made a scheduling error that would delay shipments to 3 major clients. I'd quietly contacted our trucking partners to arrange backup delivery options. When Joel discovered what I'd done, he stormed into my office. "Why did you go around me? I'm handling the shipping issue." "You created the shipping issue," I said calmly. "I fixed it. You made me look incompetent. I made sure our clients got their deliveries on time." Joel's face was red. "This is exactly what Uncle William was talking about. You can't accept that I'm in charge now." I leaned back in my chair. "You're right, Joel. I can't accept it." His eyes lit up like I'd just given him ammunition. "Then maybe you should think about whether this is the right place for you anymore." I nodded slowly. "Maybe I should." An hour later, I was in William's office with a typed resignation letter. His face went through several expressions as he read it: confusion, disbelief, then something that looked like panic. "Connor, this is unnecessary," he said. "We can work through whatever issues you're having." "No issues," I said. "Just time for me to move on." "You're being emotional. Take the weekend, think it over." "I've thought it over for 15 years, I said. "I'm done." William's tone shifted, got harder. "You realize how this looks, right? Quitting because someone younger got promoted. It's unprofessional." I nodded. "I can see how you'd think that. I won't give you a good reference. Walking out like this, leaving us in a difficult position." He leaned forward. "No company's going to want someone who throws tantrums when things don't go their way." Something cold settled in my stomach. 15 years of perfect performance, and now I was throwing tantrums. 15 years of solving problems and building relationships, and now I was unprofessional. "That's your choice," I said. I handed him my security badge and walked out of Summit Logistics for the last time. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a few minutes, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed with texts from coworkers who'd already heard the news. Word traveled fast in a small company. That evening, I opened a beer and started making a list of contacts I'd built over 15 years. Clients who trusted me, vendors who valued our relationship, employees who might be interested in new opportunities. William thought he was punishing me by questioning my reference. He had no idea what he'd just set in motion. I spent the first week after leaving Summit doing something I hadn't done in years: nothing. I slept late, read books, took long walks around my neighborhood. The absence of constant stress was remarkable. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been until the tension was gone. But by the second week, I was ready to move forward. I contacted Julia MBC, a former colleague who'd started her own logistics consulting firm 3 years earlier. We met for lunch at a downtown restaurant. "Connor Tremblay," she said, hugging me when I arrived. "I heard about Summit. Their loss. Word travels fast," I said. "It does when good people become available." Julia had always been direct. "What are your plans?" I explained my situation honestly. 15 years of experience, strong client relationships, but a complicated reference situation with William. Julia listened without judgment. References don't matter as much as results, she said finally. And I know your results. So do most people in this industry. She offered me a position as Senior Director of Operations at MBC Logistics Solutions, a growing firm that specialized in mid-sized manufacturing clients. The pay was better than what I'd been making at Summit. More importantly, Julia valued experience and competence over politics. I accepted Julia's offer and started the following Monday. MBC Logistics had 20 employees, modern systems, and a collaborative culture that felt like a breath of fresh air. No nepotism, no politics, just smart people solving problems for clients. My first project was analyzing the supply chain for Portland Manufacturing, a company frustrated with their current logistics provider's poor service and communication. As I reviewed their shipping patterns and delivery requirements, something felt familiar. Who's their current provider? I asked Julia. Summit Logistics, she said. They're looking to switch. Apparently their service has gotten worse lately. I smiled. Portland Manufacturing had been one of Summit's smaller accounts, but their owner, Joy Bill, was well connected in the manufacturing community. If we impressed him, word would spread. Over the next 2 weeks, I put together a comprehensive proposal addressing every complaint Joy had about Summit service. Better shipping routes, more reliable delivery windows, transparent communication, and competitive pricing. Everything Joel and William had failed to provide. Our presentation went perfectly. Joy signed a 3-year contract that afternoon. Connor, he said as we shook hands, this is exactly what we needed. Professional service from someone who understands our business. Word of Portland Manufacturing switch reached Summit within days. My former coworker Sarah called me that evening. William's furious, she said. He's accusing you of stealing clients. I didn't steal anything, I replied. Portland came to us looking for better service. Joel tried to call Joy and convince him to stay. Apparently it didn't go well. Sarah laughed. Joy told him Summit had proven they couldn't handle his account properly. Over the next month, similar conversations happened with other manufacturers. Julia's firm had an excellent reputation, and my addition gave them credibility with mid-sized clients who needed sophisticated logistics solutions. We won 3 more accounts from companies dissatisfied with their current providers. 2 were Summit clients. Not because I targeted them specifically, but because Julia's firm offered better service, and I understood these clients' needs from years of experience. Each new client meant revenue growth for MBC Logistics and proof that competence still mattered in business, even as spreading that MBC Logistics treated employees with respect. By month 3, I'd hired 2 former Summit employees, Tom from warehouse management and Lisa from customer service. Both had been frustrated by Joel's micromanagement and William's favoritism. They brought institutional knowledge and client relationships that strengthened our capabilities. Julia was impressed by how quickly we were growing. You've brought in 8 new accounts in 3 months, she said during our quarterly review. Revenue is up 40% from last year. Good people produce good results, I said. When they're supported properly. Meanwhile, I heard through industry contacts that Summit was struggling. Joel's inexperience was showing in delayed deliveries and billing errors. Several long-term clients were asking questions about service quality. William had hired 2 new employees to replace the ones who joined our firm, but training took time, and Joel wasn't qualified to provide that training. The problems were compounding. JKT Manufacturing, my former biggest account, was apparently considering their options after another delivery failure. Steve Kowalski had called William directly to express concerns about Summit's reliability. I didn't take satisfaction in Summit's struggles, exactly. But I felt validated that the problems I'd predicted were happening exactly as I'd expected. The turning point came during month 4. JKT Manufacturing reached out to MBC Logistics for a consultation. Steve Kowalski wanted to discuss alternatives to Summit's deteriorating service. I met Steve at his factory, a facility I knew well from 8 years of managing their logistics needs. He looked tired and frustrated. "Connor, I'm glad to see you landed somewhere good," he said. "Summit's been a disaster since you left. Joel doesn't understand our operations, and William seems more interested in defending his nephew than fixing problems. What specific issues are you having?" I asked, though I could guess. Steve listed a familiar catalog of problems: missed delivery windows, incorrect shipments, poor communication, and higher costs due to inefficiency. Everything I'd seen beginning when Joel took over. "We need a logistics partner who understands manufacturing," Steve said. "Someone who can anticipate problems and solve them quickly." I presented MBC Logistics' capabilities and our track record with similar manufacturers. Steve was impressed by our systems, our team's experience, and our commitment to reliable service. 2 weeks later, JKT signed with us. Their account represented 30% of Summit's revenue. The loss of JKT Manufacturing hit Summit hard. Sarah called me the day after they heard the news. "William's panicking," she said. "He called an emergency meeting." Joel was practically in tears. "That's a big account," I said diplomatically. "It gets worse. Apparently 3 other clients are reviewing their contracts too. Word's getting around that Summit can't deliver reliable service anymore." I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because William's arrogance and Joel's incompetence were finally catching up with them. Sadness because Summit had been my professional home for 15 years. But business was business. Companies that valued politics over competence eventually paid the price. Julia was thrilled about the JKT contract. "This puts us on the map with major manufacturers," she said. "We're not a small consulting firm anymore." She was right. With JKT's volume and reputation, other manufacturers started paying attention to MBC Logistics. We were becoming a serious player in the regional market. By the end of month 6, we'd grown from 20 employees to 35. Julia offered me a partnership in the firm and the title of Executive Vice President. Everything William had refused to give me after 15 years of loyalty. The industry conference in Seattle provided the perfect opportunity to see how the landscape had shifted. MBC Logistics had a booth showcasing our recent growth and client successes. Summit's booth was smaller than previous years, with fewer visitors. I was talking with potential clients when I saw William and Joel approaching. William looked older, more stressed. Joel seemed nervous, constantly checking his phone. "Connor," William said when they reached our booth. "Congratulations on your success here." "Thank you," I replied professionally. "We should talk," William said. "Maybe there's an opportunity for our companies to collaborate on some projects." I almost laughed. 6 months ago, William had questioned my professionalism and threatened to give me bad references. Now he wanted to collaborate. "We're pretty focused on our current client base," I said. "But good luck with your business." Joel spoke up for the first time. "Connor, I know things ended badly between us. But I've learned a lot since you left. Maybe we could discuss some kind of partnership arrangement." I looked at him for a moment. The cockiness was gone, replaced by desperation. "I'm sure you have learned a lot, Joel. That's how experience works." The final blow to Summit came 2 months later. Tenno Industries, their second largest client, announced they were switching to MBC Logistics. Barbara Joshua called me personally to discuss the transition. "Connor, we should have made this move months ago," she said. Joel never understood our business, and William seemed more interested in protecting his nephew than serving our needs. Tenno's contract made MBC Logistics the third largest logistics firm in the region. Julia and I started discussing expansion into new markets, possibly opening offices in Portland and Boise. Meanwhile, Summit was hemorrhaging employees and clients. Sarah and 3 other longtime workers joined our team, bringing their expertise and client relationships with them. The company that William inherited from his father was collapsing under his poor leadership and Joel's incompetence. They'd lost 60% of their revenue in 8 months. Industry publications started writing about Summit's decline as a cautionary tale about nepotism in family businesses. Joel became a case study in how not to promote unqualified relatives. Julia asked if I felt bad about Summit's situation. They created their own problems, I said. William chose politics over competence. This is the natural result. By the 1-year anniversary of my resignation, Summit Logistics was in serious financial trouble. They'd laid off half their staff and lost most of their major accounts. William was reportedly trying to sell the company before it went bankrupt completely. Joel had been quietly let go 3 months earlier. Word around the industry was that he tried to find another logistics job, but his reputation preceded him. The story of his failure at Summit had spread throughout the regional business community. MBC Logistics, meanwhile, was thriving. We'd opened the Portland office and were negotiating for space in Boise. Our employee count had reached 60, and revenue was projected to double again next year. Julia offered me the position of Chief Operating Officer with equity in the company. At 43, I was finally getting the recognition and opportunity I'd earned through years of competent work. My personal life was improving too. I'd started dating again, something I hadn't done since my divorce. Linda, a project manager at one of our client companies, shared my appreciation for competence and honesty in both business and relationships. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something meaningful rather than just maintaining someone else's legacy. The newspaper article appeared on a Tuesday morning. Summit Logistics closes after 25 years in business. The story detailed how poor management decisions and client defections had forced William Hale to shut down the company his father had built. Joel was mentioned as the former executive whose inexperience contributed to the company's decline. His business career was effectively over before it had really started. Several former Summit employees called me that day. Some were looking for job opportunities, others just wanted to share their thoughts about the company's end. "It didn't have to happen this way," Tom said during our conversation. Summit had good systems, good clients, good people. William threw it all away for nepotism. That afternoon, Julia and I met with our leadership team to discuss acquiring some of Summit's remaining assets. Their warehouse equipment and client database might be valuable for our continued expansion. It felt strange to be discussing the dismantling of my former employer. But business was business, and opportunities had to be evaluated objectively. That evening, I drove past Summit's former headquarters. The parking lot was empty except for a moving truck. 15 years of my professional life had happened in that building. Now it was just another vacant office space. 6 months later, I was in my corner office at MBC Logistics when my assistant buzzed the intercom. "Connor, there are 2 men here to see you. They don't have an appointment, but they say it's important." I looked up from my quarterly reports to see William and Joel standing in my doorway. Both looked uncomfortable, nervous. William's suit was worn, and Joel seemed to have aged 5 years in the 18 months since I'd seen him. "Connor," William said, "thank you for seeing us. We won't take much of your time." I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. "What can I do for you?" William cleared his throat. "We're both looking for new opportunities. I know things ended poorly between us, but I was hoping you might have some advice. Maybe even consider us for positions here." The irony was perfect. The man who'd questioned my professionalism and threatened bad references was now asking for my help finding work. The nephew who'd told me I couldn't accept change was begging for a chance to prove himself. I listened politely as they explained their situations. William had burned through his savings trying to keep Summit afloat. Joel had been rejected by every logistics company in the region. When they finished, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. "I appreciate you coming to me," I said. "But we're looking for people who understand the value of competence and loyalty. People who know how to respect their team members." I stood up, indicating the meeting was over. "Good luck with your job search, gentlemen." I watched them leave, walking past the MBC Logistics success story displayed in our lobby. Photos of our team, our clients, our growth over the past 2 years. Everything William could have had if he'd valued competence over nepotism. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation. It's simply building something better and watching people realize what they threw away.